Hello, this is Pastor Don Long, and here we are in the Grafted In broadcast as once again we reflect back to our trip last year to Israel and some of the great experiences we had there. Once again, I have Desi with me. Hi, Desi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
And we are trying to remember some things and talk about some things about Israel. I don't know about you, Desi, but I don't think about it every day. But when something comes across my path, I think, oh, I want to be back there. Does that happen to you?
Yeah, it does.
It's like you have a sudden flash memory of being in Israel. I think we might have mentioned this before, but a question a lot of our listeners, viewers have is this one. Is it safe to go to Israel? And what do you say if people ask you that?
I think it's very safe. While you're there, you don't really think of all the dangerous things that could take place because you're so intrigued by everything around you. And everything's very secure there. There's soldiers all around, and they know what they're doing, so you feel very safe.
Yeah, I never personally have had any feelings of apprehension. Certainly our guides are good and don't take us to places that are unsafe, but people think of Israel as this place where people are paranoid, they're frightened, they're kind of looking like they're afraid at any moment something's going to happen. But the people of Israel really enjoy life, and the children are playing around. And so when we travel over there on our buses, you're looking at a peaceful countryside. You're aware there's certainly terrorists in the world, but by and large, I think our experience has been we feel very safe there in Israel. Well, last two broadcasts, we started our tour in Alon Mare. We went up on that mountaintop, remember, and we're looking down where Abraham came in, down that valley to Shechem. And then we also, I think it might have been with Unique in the broadcast, we were talking about Shiloh and all that went on in Shiloh and the great discoveries there. But I've got some other places that we visited, and I thought maybe we can kind of reflect on what we remember about them.
Okay.
I know while we're in that area, we go to Karni Shamron. And Karni Shamron is a community, a settlement that was established in what the world calls the West Bank, that which the Bible says is the heartland of Israel, the mountains of Israel. And Karni Shamron is the head of, is where the headquarters for Christian Friends of Israeli Communities is, with Sandra Barris. Can you tell us anything about, what do you know about Sandra Barris, about what she does, Christian Friends of Israeli Communities?
I know that she does a lot to bridge the gap between Christians and Jews by bringing them to Israel and showing them hands-on what the land of Israel is and what it means to the Jewish people.
Right. So we get to meet firsthand people who are living in the West Bank, who are living in these communities. And, do they look like vicious settlers to you? Or
No.
They're normal people, right? Just ordinary people, except I think there may be people with a vision.
Yeah.
People who have a purpose for why they live there. It's not accidental, but when we went through Karni Shamron, we drive in the bus and there's houses all over the place. Kind of looks like the Midwest a little bit, tile roofs. Everybody's, you see people on the streets, you see children, playgrounds. But in Karni Shamron, one of the things that we do whenever we go there is we plant trees in Israel. Do you know what that's about? Why are we planting trees?
Because it makes you realize that you're part of the land once you're putting something kind of yourself
into the soil.
Yeah, into the soil.
Yeah, and the Bible says that that's what will happen is, first of all, it tells the Israelis they're to go back and replant the mountains of Israel. But there are several verses in the scripture that talk about the Gentiles coming and tending your vines, Gentiles coming and planting. So one of the fulfillment of prophecies is that the mountains of Israel are once again going to be replanted. I don't know about you, but when I first went to Israel, I was struck by how barren it is. We live in Massachusetts, trees all over the place, and you get to Israel and there's a lot of it's actually an arid environment, but you have vineyards and things like that, and you do have places with trees, but you have a lot that there's just rocks, just rocks. Did you have that impression? A lot of rocks here.
Rocks and a lot of sand.
Yep, yeah, and the thought, and it's hard to imagine now, but back at the beginning of the 20th century, there were no trees at all. The Ottoman Empire, when they took over that area and ruled it for over 600 years, they taxed your trees. So if you own property and you had trees, we're going to tax you per tree. Well, if you don't want to pay your taxes, you cut the trees down. And so back in the time when Mark Twain and others wrote about their travels, they would go through Carney Shomron, places like that. There were no trees at all. And now you go to Israel and you see whole hillsides. And to think that all those hillsides of trees were hand planted. People had to plant them. In fact, there is a Jewish holiday once a year for the planting of trees. And all the school children in Israel that day go out and plant trees. But whenever we go there, we get to plant trees or vines. We've done all kinds of things. But this year we planted shade trees. Do you remember that? It was
I do, actually, yes.
with some kind of a walkway where the elderly
I think
were.
it was like a park type,
Uh-huh.
just sitting kind of area.
And there were no trees there.
Yeah, and the sun was beating down right on that specific part.
Right, right. So here the elderly had a place to go, but they're
Yeah.
sitting in the hot sun.
Mm.
And so our job was to plant trees around those benches, which will grow up into shade trees.
Mhm.
I think that'd be kind of cool to go back and see them, you know.
That would
It's
be
like,
cool.
I mean, we've planted fruit trees in the past, but this time it was shade trees there. And so what do? We dig a hole?
Mhm. Then we put the
Put the tree in it?
and you cover up the hole.
And then you stand there and get your picture taken. That's kind of cool, though, I think, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's like, you know, you could be a tourist and go to Israel, and you know, you go to Jerusalem, you go to Haifa, you go to Tel Aviv, but you never got to plant a tree. And that's part of being identified with the land, being identified with the people. And, you know, they're always taking pictures of us doing the planting. They always want to know, here comes these Christians from America, and they're helping us. They're putting trees in our ground. Let's skip ahead a minute because we can tie this together. From Carney Shomron, later in the trip we went to the Golan Heights. And up in the Golan Heights, we were right up on the Lebanese border, and we had another opportunity to plant. Do you remember what that was?
Kiwi.
That's what it was. Kiwi vines. Remember that? We're out in the middle of nowhere. There's the Lebanese border, and all these kiwi vines are growing that they're harvesting. And so we got to plant kiwi vines right up on the Lebanese border. Do you remember what they were growing on the other side over in Lebanon?
Some kind of drug.
Yeah. It was either opium, poppies, or marijuana. I think it might have been marijuana. But here on the Israeli side, they're growing kiwis, and on the other side in Lebanon, they're growing drugs of some kind, you know. But that, again, was a deposit of us into the land, that we're actually leaving part of our effort in the land. You know, as a tourist, you go and you buy things and you bring them home. This was something that we could do and leave of ourselves there. So Sandra Barris, back to Carney Shomron, back to Christian Friends of Israeli Communities. Sandra has this passion to make a connection between the Jewish people who are living in the West Bank and Christian congregations. And we go there and we not only the Christian communities and the Jewish communities, we can build some understanding. You know, the first thing, and I know you're a student of history, I know especially you've read a lot about the Holocaust. And so for the average Jew who understands history, they don't really have a good view of Christians, because they view Christians were the ones who caused the Holocaust and everything like that. so for many, if not most of the people that we meet in the Shamron, this is the first time that they get to meet Christians who are concerned about them, who want to know how they live, who are very pro-Israel when we're there, and who will invest in their communities. And so we have another community, Havot Yair, there, that we invest in. Do you remember where we gave our money to?
To their daycare.
Daycare center. And there is a settlement there, and then what they would call an outpost. It's a group of families who said, you know, there's land over here that belongs to the community. We don't yet have permission to build on it, but we're going to build anyway. And a group of them move over there, and immediately, you know, families settle in. Well, now you have children. And lots of children in those communities. Did you get that impression?
I did.
I mean, lots of children, big families. And so they have a daycare center there. And this was our second time to bring money to help expand their daycare center there. I'm not recalling how many children they had there, but simple little daycare. But again, they don't have the money to expand it. They don't have the money to put the air conditioners in and so forth. So our congregation right here in Fitchburg comes and plants money into that. And they're excited about that. I think, were you on the trip that the first time we went there and gave money to them?
Yes.
And remember, we went into somebody's house, and they were just all excited to have us there,
Yeah.
and wanted to know, who are these Christians and why are they doing this thing? And in that community, as in the outpost, is where Moshe ben Baruch, that would be Moses, the son of Baruch, Moshe ben Baruch, is our tour guide. What do you think about his house?
It's very beautiful. It's huge.
It is, isn't it?
I was surprised the first time I saw it. Because you wouldn't think that they would have all that money to build such a, not judging by how they look, but you just wouldn't guess that someone would build that big of a house out there.
Yeah, you
like
see,
a regular person.
you see small houses.
Yeah.
And suddenly, you know, he's got this really good sized house there.
Yeah, it's huge.
And built it because he believes in the future of Israel. The government could sign some kind of crazy deal and tear it down.
Yep.
So he has no guarantee. Most of the people who build houses there can't get loans from the bank to build it because the bank's not going to give them money when the government may tear the house down. So this is all their private money that they spend for it. But a nice house sits on a hill overlooking that valley. And this time we found out what he had added other things outside the house.
Outside the house.
The
His
guest houses. It's got 2 guest houses.
Oh yeah, the other one.
Yeah. Did you think you might want to stay there?
Yeah, that was very nice as well.
Yeah. It was like, whoa, this is better than a hotel room around
I
here,
know.
you know. And you think, well, why is he building guest house? Because he expects he's going to have guests that are going to come, and that's not too far from Ariel. But they're going to come and want to spend time with he and his family and be able to travel around central Israel there. But pretty impressive, huh? So we've been to that community twice, and both times, you know, the people of the community know we're there. They know we're Christians. This is for them the first time they've ever experienced Christians giving to help them. And you were part of that.
I was.
Is that cool or is that cool, you know? I mean, how many young people from Fitchburg can say that? You know, I've been to Israel and I've given into the communities there. So Karni Shamron and that whole area there is just a key place for us to understand who are these people who live there, why are they living there, and how can we come along and help them in their, you know, in the needs that they have. Sandra travels all around the United States, as you know. She comes to our church periodically. She's going to be in New England on May 6th, which is a Wednesday. Most likely here at our congregation, but we may take her to a another congregation instead. We certainly would invite you as listeners to come and hear Sandra. She describes what's going on there. Would you encourage people to make a trip to Israel with us?
Definitely.
Why? Why should they go to Israel? What would you say?
With us specifically, because we go to places that usually normal tourist groups wouldn't go.
Right.
And personally, I think that our congregation has a really deep understanding of the Jewish roots of our faith, so that brings a different perspective into it.
Yeah, it's not really like going to another country where you're just learning about a country. You go to Germany or France or something like this. But for us, it's really learning about the Bible and learning about, as Christians, what is our family heritage. Because on this broadcast, we talk about the fact that Paul says that as Gentiles, we've been grafted into our Jewish roots. So it's an opportunity for us to go and see what our Jewish roots are all about. Did you feel that connection when you were there?
I did, yes.
It was outside of what you thought 5 years ago you'd be doing. I have no doubt about that. I thought your mother was pretty brave to let you come on this trip, and she wasn't there. That was good of her, amen. Did she miss coming?
Yes, definitely.
Once you've been to Israel,
yeah, you want to go back.
You want to go back. You want to go back. And not to see the tourist sites, but to, again, connect with the land and see the people. Well, Connie Shamron is where we planted trees, and certainly that's going to be a highlight of any trip we make. I've got a list of some of the places we went here, and I want to, in the next few minutes, look at a couple of of others places that we went to. Sandra takes us to a place called Lev Binyamin, and that's where the handicapped children's place was. Do you remember that?
I remember.
And so that's another work our church hasn't personally gotten connected to, but other Christian churches have. So Sandra takes to understand there was a girls' school there. Remember that big building where the girls' school was? And but what about all those children? The work with the handicapped children. Do you ever think that's something you might want to do?
That would be a good experience. Yeah.
It's like Israel takes care of its children, and there are programs so that much like we have in the United States, but where people gather together and they help with working with these children. They have camps for them, but this is a regular school for them. I think, was it this trip they were using cameras, or was that the one before?
This trip.
This trip, the way we.
Oh wait, the one where they're taking pictures.
Yeah.
That was the one before.
Okay. Well, I just remember the children learning how to use a camera and things like that. And so they're in the midst of a piece of the world where so many people hate the Jews and think they shouldn't be there, is this beautiful community that is providing schooling for girls, I think all the way through high school, and is providing this outreach to these handicapped children. I think many of the girls there work in that school as well. This past year we didn't go to the Ethiopian girls' school, but I think we did the trip before.
We did.
And again, that's a community in the so-called West Bank where the people got together and say, how can we help the families in Israel? And they sponsored, there's both a boys' school and a girls' school. We've never gone to the boys' school. Yeah, there's a boys' school there. We never go to the boys' school. I don't know why.
In the same place?
Yep, yeah, it's across the street.
Oh.
Yeah, across the street. It's not the same school building. It's on the other side of the street. But what did you think about going to that Ethiopian girls' school? I mean, we called the Ethiopian girls' school. They weren't all Ethiopians there, but there were a lot of Ethiopian girls there.
I thought it was cool. They thought I was one of them.
Did they?
They were waving at me.
Yeah, right. Oh, you're one of us. I heard a broadcast by interview with Ari Abramowitz, and Ari has come and spoken at our church, and he and Jeremy have the Israel Now News, I think it's called, Israel Broadcast anyway. But Ari was talking about how he made Aliyah. He grew up in Houston, and he made Aliyah, and he wanted to go in the IDF, and he didn't speak Hebrew well enough. So he had to go to a OPON, or a absorption center, to learn Hebrew. So you're going to go to this absorption center for 3 months, 6 months, whatever, so you can get proficient in Hebrew, then you can go into the IDF. Well, he simply looked through a list of absorption centers and signed up for one, and turned out he signed up for one that is for Ethiopians. and he didn't know that.
Oh, no.
And so he shows up and he said, I'm the only white face in this Ethiopian class, but he said he just fell in love with the Ethiopian people and their generous spirit.
Mm.
But I don't know how it struck you looking at those girls.
Yeah.
But I can remember, they're going through their lessons and everything, and I'm thinking that some of those girls sitting in the high school 2 years earlier were shepherdesses in Ethiopia. They didn't have running water. They didn't know what a toilet was. They were living in the world's most primitive conditions, and they're picked up, and the Israeli government flies them all to Israel because they're Jewish. And so now they're in Israel, and it's almost like being picked up out of the Stone Age, and you're dropped into this society with cell phones and MP3 players and TVs. And but when you looked at those girls, did they seem shy or backwards to you?
Not at all.
Very friendly, weren't they? And loved it when we took pictures of them.
Yeah.
They're just vivacious young girls. Seemed to be, and maybe I'm prejudiced about it, but it seemed to me that there was more a positive life coming out of them than a typical high school here. Mm. You see teenagers here kind of moping around. I didn't see, the girls were just filled with energy. Mm. And we got an opportunity to say, well, wait a minute, if you shut down the West Bank, if you say if we're gonna take the West Bank and give it to the Palestinian Authority and let them create their own state, they're going to destroy all those communities. There will be no school there. There will be no place for the handicapped children. There will be no orphanage over here. These communities will be shut down because the Palestinian Authority says no Jews will be allowed to live. Does that make you a little more passionate when you see these people? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I look at it and I say, whoa, everybody should go there, see for yourself. And then maybe you might say, well, if the PA needs land, give them land, let them do what they need to do. But you don't tear down what people have built up.
Right.
And I think that was a powerful experience. Now that was Lev Binyamin. I think another experience, and we probably have a little time to get into this, when you come from Judea and Samaria, especially Samaria, when you're up in that area, mm-hmm. and now we're going to go to Jerusalem, we go down the Jordan River, mm-hmm. and we're taking that long trip down the Jordan River, and then we're going to turn right where Kathy's camel was, and we're going to go up to Jerusalem. All along the Jordan River Valley are these settlements, farming communities, things like that. And every year that we go, we just drive by. Mm-hmm. You look out your bus window, you see people, you see the settlement, the date farm, the whatever's vineyards growing, whatever's growing out there. But there's people who live there. Mm-hmm. And so on this trip, we got to go and visit a number of those. We visited a community where they had, I think it was kind of like a drop-in center for elderly people. They were doing ceramics. They had the ceramics they showed us. Do you remember that? We went to, that's where we went to the little store there, the grocery store.
Oh, yes, I remember now.
What was so unusual about that? Do you remember the guy behind the desk?
Yeah, he was a camp counselor in Great Barrington.
Yeah. Here we are in the middle of Israel. And on the Jordan River, tours don't go there.
Yeah.
And here we show up at this community. He said he'd never seen anyone from America visit that community. But it wasn't just America. Here we are from Massachusetts, and he spent the summer in Great Barrington. You know, it's like this is just a weird world.
It was really weird.
But we stopped there, and then we stopped at a goat farm.
Oh yeah, I remember.
You remember the goat farm? And do you like goat milk?
Not typically.
Nor do I, as we found out.
Yeah.
But they were raising goats there, and then the lady takes the goat milk and she makes goat cheese. So we actually got to go into her house, which by the way is another thing that we do on our tours. You know, we have a limited number. We usually have anywhere between a dozen to 20. I think we would take a tour up to 35, which would be a busload. I saw where Mike Huckabee is leading a tour, and he's got 250 people on the tour.
Wow.
That's like
I've
eight buses.
That's crazy.
So just imagine 8 buses by the time everybody gets off the buses, and then you teach and you get back on the buses. You can visit 2 places a day,
Yeah.
you know, where we can visit lots. But one of the things you can't do with 8 buses is go visit the goat farm.
Yeah.
We're all going to come to this lady's house. All 200 of us are going to get in there. But we were in there. We got to taste her goat milk, which I thought was pretty good. I didn't, you know, fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't particularly want to drink it all the time, but it didn't taste like it does here. Wasn't very goaty.
True.
But what did you think about that? Out in the middle of the Jordan River Valley, here's these people just being farmers, and the world wants to say you can't live there. And the sad thing is that, again, were the Palestinian Authority to take over that area, they wouldn't say, okay, we'll buy your goats from you and we'll run a goat farm. They would kick them out, seize the goat farm, and probably destroy it, which is what they did in Gaza. So you went all the way to Israel to be able to hold a goat.
It was worth it.
It was worth
so
it.
Cute.
It really was. Well, those are just some of the memories we have, and some of the things we think of as we not only see the sights and engage with the land, but we get to meet the people of Israel. And we certainly would welcome you to come on one of our tours to Israel. You can find out about it by contacting the church at the address at the end of the broadcast. This is Pastor Don Long. It's been good to be with you today. Look forward to seeing you next week. Very good, Desi.